What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp here for the Fightful.com podcast, September 28th edition. We're talking all kinds of MMA. We got lots of stuff going on. We're brought to you by DraftBeast.com. Go there for the most fun you will have in fantasy sports. I said it earlier, the Goon Games. Vontaze Burfict is back, so you better pick him up. That is a no-brainer, or the Cincinnati defense, whatever you need. We're also brought to you by Trig Tent, brand new political website. Here for you in the heart of election season. That debate on Monday night was more sports entertainment than anything that I watched on the USA Network. I'll tell you that much. Also on it, go to our podcast page, Fightful.com/podcast. Open up any of our podcast pages, and you will see that on it link. You'll go there. You can check out their supplements, their apparel, their equipment used by the likes of Bailey, Triple H, Cesaro, Seth Rollins. Tons of people. Joseph Benavidez of UFC fame. Lots of people giving love to Onnit. So if you all give some love to Onnit through those links, it really helps us out. Showdown Joe, you are back from Japan, my friend.
I am, and I think I'm finally recovered from the jet lag. I missed you, man. I was hoping we could do something out of Japan, but the time change, the 13 hours, 12-hour difference was kind of difficult for both you and I to try and figure out. But hopefully, if Rizin has me back, we can figure it out so we can actually do one from my hotel in Japan. But thanks for having me, and I'm excited to be back.
I heard rumblings that Fightful.com owner Jimmy Van may try to make a trip to Japan later this year to check out Rizin. Rumblings. I cannot confirm nor deny.
I cannot confirm nor deny that as well, but I wouldn't be surprised because at that time of the year, there is a lot of stuff going on in Japan, and that is right in his wheelhouse. Wrestling, MMA, but if there's any time that he could get out there, that would probably be perfect.
Yeah, the Tokyo Dome show for New Japan is right after that. Lots of cool stuff going on there. We've got so much to talk about. UFC 205, the most stacked card in UFC history. I feel like we've said that about 4 times this year, and it didn't end up happening. UFC Portland this Saturday, UFC Brasilia last Saturday, Rizin. A programming note, guys, as I mentioned, there's some family issues going on, so this weekend's show, not sure when it'll be. Hoping that everything can go according to plan. It appears as if the Thursday and Friday shows are on as scheduled, but Joe and I will get to you sometime this weekend, if not right after the show. But actually, probably we're not coming to you right after the Portland show. That one's not going to end until like 1 or 2 in the morning. So probably Sunday at some point. But Joe, you were a part of this, and I actually showed it on last week's show to Matt Riddle. And when I told Matt Riddle, did you hear that Vanderlei and Crazy Horse Charles Bennett got into it? And he goes, recently? This is a feud, Joe, that has went on for over a decade. And these two almost got into it in the lobby of a hotel room in which you were seen checking into.
Would you like my take on how it all went down?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it all stems back from I'm at the airport. I'm waiting to take a bus to the hotel. And by the way, the folks at Rizin are unbelievable. I mean, these guys are pinpoint anything and everything they do. Anyways, I get there. There's a Rizin sign right there. I introduce myself to the young lady. She's like, oh, she asked for my name, told her my name. And, she gets a bus ticket and takes me out to where the bus is going to come pick me up. And then I would say 3 minutes later, I get this hand on my shoulder. I turn around, it's Vanderlei. I said, hey, what's going on? And, we just started shooting the breeze, and we got on the bus together, and we, rode to the hotel. It was about a half an hour, 35 minutes maybe to the hotel. And we're swapping stories about the kids, my son, his son, and just this and that, his gym in Vegas, Brazil. And we're just talking about, he asked me about my TV show. He was in a great mood. Everything was awesome. We're laughing. We got off the bus. We got to the hotel. And we're just making sure that, if we need to contact each other, we had the right information, no problem. We walk in, and there's the Rizin staff, Sean. Hi, guys, how are you? Sign here. Me and Vanderlei sign in, and everything's blah, blah. We're just talking, introducing ourselves. I see Heath Herring. Everything is cool. Jerry Millen, and we're talking. Okay, all right. I'm going to check in, guys. Everything is cool. I turn around, and as I begin walking to where you see me in this video, The door opens from the outside, and in walks in Charles Crazy Horse Bennett. Now, at the top of his lungs, and obviously I'm not going to use any words that he would use, namely the N-word, but he just has his phone out. And he says, "Can I get a picture with you, N-word? Come on, N-word. I want to get a picture with you." Right? And I'm looking over to my right, and I look over to my left, and it's Vanderlei. And I don't think Vanderlei, I'm going to go with there may have been a misinterpretation, because I thought Crazy Horse was being legit, like just saying game. You know what happened in the past happened. Now that we see each other, it's squashed. Let's just get a picture here. Let's get a selfie together, right? To tell everyone it's cool. Vanderlei took that the complete opposite. He basically thought, and remember, there's a translation issue here, okay? He obviously lost in translation. He took that as a threat. He took that as he was being mocked. And I'm just grabbed my suitcase, and I'm looking over. I'm like, they're not going to do nothing here. There's no way they're going to do anything here. And I walk over to where you then see me in the video trying to check in. Now, I'm all here, Sean, is these two guys going at each other. They're going at each other, and I'm just looking over, and it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And then finally they just said, "Crazy Horse, you need to go to your room. Go to your room." And they start bringing him to the elevator, and then Vanderlei starts just losing his marbles because Charles kept saying something. Vanderlei kept saying, I won't show you what Vanderlei was doing with his hands, grabbing a certain region of his body numerous times. I think Heath Herring, you may have heard him do an interview saying where he was acting like a cobra. Well, you know what cobras do, right?
Yeah.
They spit. So it got really, really hectic. And then you see the video go down when they're closer to the elevator, and that poor Japanese staff member of the hotel trying to just, prevent the elevator from closing. And people are like, "You've got to let that elevator close. We're trying to separate these guys." And there's just me just trying to sign in. "Can I get my credit card back, please? I want my credit card back so I can get to my room." And I'm like, "I'm not going in that elevator just yet. Someone's got to watch what's going down here." And it was crazy, crazy, crazy all week with those two guys. Eventually, to my understanding, Vanderlei was moved to another hotel just to avoid another sort of circus scenario there. I did find it funny online. I saw some people saying, "Oh, it's typical Rizin and Japanese MMA. It was all staged." It wasn't staged, man. It was far from staged. Then backstage after the event, they went at each other again. Well, it was more Vanderlei trying to get to Crazy Horse because obviously he just beat his dude. But yeah, so that's my take, Sean.
Speaking of beating his dude, in one weekend, Rizin took Charles Bennett, who before this year or before October of last year had not fought in 3 years. He is literally a 500 fighter, 30-30-2, and he's the talk of the town right now. He was who people were talking about. People weren't talking about Mirko Cro Cop after the show. They weren't talking about Gabby Garcia after the show. They were saying, "Did you see what Charles Bennett did to Kimura? Did you see Charles Bennett and Vanderlei Silva go at it? He's a star again." I love Japanese MMA.
Oh, man. It is – I got goosebumps. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera. The fact that you just said, "I love Japanese MMA." It is a completely different world out there, a different way of everything, Sean, the way they do business, the way Rizin takes care of its staff, its fighters, how they put on the show, the prep work. It's so different than what we're accustomed to in North America. It is a breath of fresh air. And I know there's tons of people that are going to say, "Oh, this and that from the Pride days and Yakuza this and blah, blah." I get that. I understand that. Believe me, I get that. I totally understand that. But my experience over there was just Japanese MMA was back. And it just came in a way that was so heartwarming, nostalgic. It was just like, wow, this is awesome. I'm here. I can't, is this really happening? Takes me back to my days staying up at 3 a.m. watching the events, trying to find the latest Pride on VHS from someone. Let's tape trade, man. Let's try and figure this out. Like this. Oh, now we're seeing it on pay-per-view, and finally getting the DVDs in the mail. It's just like, oh my God, I was there live, and I got to call it. It was just absolutely unreal. And like you said, Crazy Horse Bennett. That's what the Japanese love. And the one thing that blew my mind. take nothing away from American promoters, and I'm talking from Dana White to Jeff Aronson, Lex McMahon, whomever you want to talk about from whatever promotion, Terry Trebilcock from King of the Cage, doesn't matter. Great guys. They know how to run their businesses in North America. Nobuhiro Sakakibara, when he spoke to the fighters at the pre-fight weigh-ins, we all had the earpieces on with the translator. Shingo, who's the matchmaker, was also our translator. Born and raised in Chi-Town, by the way, I want to mention that. But he lives in Japan now. Obviously works for Rizin, translating everything. And then Sakakibara stops and starts speaking in English. And he starts talking to the fighters. And you had to be there to understand the way it was coming across and the way it was accepted in the room. And he just basically said, here at Rizin, it's just like we're reviving pride. I don't care if you win. I don't care if we lose. We don't care if you win. We don't care if you lose. All we care about is you make the fans happy and you put on the show of your life. It was just, and he went on this amazing speech. It was heartwarming, and you could see the fighters all just sitting there, their forearms are getting tense, and they're just kind of like, yeah, yeah. It was an unbelievable speech, and that's just the way it is over there. They don't care if you win or lose. What they want to see is a show. They want to see a show, and damn it, Sean Ross Sapp, Charles Crazy Horse Bennett is a show.
We're going to talk about Rizin again in one moment. I have been sent breaking news, Joe, by one Corey Cropper, or as I like to call Mirko Cro Cop. Apparently, Nikita Krylov has been added to EA UFC 2. Joe, I know you've had a lot of big things happen this week. None bigger than this.
Not even close. That's the greatest. That's it. Can we end the podcast here? Let's just put
I'm going to play as him tonight. Put it up. I'm going to fire up the game and play as him. Back to Rizin. Speaking of Cro Cop, little known fact: after his second release from the UFC, since then he is 12-2 in combat sports between kickboxing and MMA. He won with ease, relative ease. They switched around the brackets afterwards so they could get a third Vanderlei Cro Cop fight. I am all on board for that. That's the smart thing to do. It was the right thing to do. You never, because I remember the Strikeforce GP, people are like, some of these are weird. They should save them for the finals. No, you don't know who's making it to the finals. Do the fight while you can. So later this year, we get Cro Cop Vanderlei 2 or Vanderlei 3. Oh, what do you think of that? Good move?
Yeah. I mean, you can make the argument from both sides. You put them on the opposite sides of the bracket, and then you have them sort of meet in the finals. But you just never know, man. You never know what happens, and injuries take place, and anything can happen. So the fact that we're getting it is one thing. But Cro Cop, man, this guy is a born again dude, man. He is revived, and you know, ladies and gentlemen, when I got to Japan, I finally got my schedule, tried to figure out when I could connect with Sean in terms of getting the podcast done, because I wanted everyone to get a sense of what it was like while I was down there. And the day after I landed was a 13-hour day for Heath Herring and I. Started at 9 a.m., ended at 10 p.m. Is that 13 hours? Yeah, it's 13 hours of interviewing. Just interviews back to back to back with each fighter. We would interview them for 10, 15, 20 minutes. We would get a 5-minute break. The next one would roll in, and they would just stagger in. Man, when Cro Cop showed up there, he took one look at Heath Herring, big, huge smile on his face. It was just kind of like, oh, my God. They shook hands. He looked over at me, and he points at me, and he's kind of like, I said, Canada. He's like, oh, yeah. And then he looked over at the laptop that was to our left, and his right, and he says, are we recording this? And we're like, no. This is just for the broadcast. We're going to just shoot the breeze and talk about a bunch of things. Dude, he sits down, relaxes, sinks into his chair, crosses his arms. What's up, boys? Sort of like that. And then one question was asked, maybe two, and he went off on this 10-minute diatribe of how his life is completely changed, how he's content and so happy to be back in Japan. Understands his UFC stint wasn't what it was. You know, he says it's just different the way the Japanese promoters do business versus how the UFC does business. He's so relieved and relaxed to be back in Japan. His training was completely different. He says, I'm rejuvenated again. My numbers have changed in training when we're doing all the circuits and the burpees and this and that and pull-ups and getting everything timed. And he's like, he goes, I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to surprise both of you guys. And I mentioned it on the broadcast. He goes, I'm going to take this guy down on the ground. I'm going to submit him. Nice. Me and Heath looked at each other, tried not to laugh, but we laughed. And Cro Cop just kind of looked at us like, you're going to see. He goes, I've got this move that I've been working on training. It's a basic judo toss. It's a clinch, turn him this way, land on top, and then go for the submission. He goes, as a special submission, I'm going to show you guys. Man, when he landed that fight or landed that trip on Young Man and then gets the submission, we lost our minds. We lost our minds because it's exactly how he called it, how he predicted. He's like, it's not guaranteed, but I'm waiting for the right moment. And I'm telling you guys, if I get the right moment, nobody has stopped me in training. I'm going to do it in this fight. Lo and behold, he did it.
Also, Darren Cruikshank picked up a win. Kron Gracie picked up a win. Gabby Garcia picked up a win. Who can they throw at Gabby Garcia?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, who's really out there that can compete with her? She is just dominant.
She-Hulk?
She's dominant, man. She's just got anything and everything on every fighter out there, minus striking. If they could find, a striker.
Lady Tapa almost knocked her out in that first fight.
Yeah, and she's working on her striking. She said flat out, she goes, I'm obviously a 10-time world BJJ champion, needs to work on her striking. She knows that. And what a character she, not a character, just a nice, like, pardon the irony, just a nice little girl, like she's so, it's like she's sensitive. She just, she during the interview, we're just kind of like, okay.
But can she get to 135 and fight Ronda Rousey?
Yes.
That's the question.
Close. No. Her cat, like her thigh is about the size of my chest. Like she's just a monster. And when she puts her hands out and, I don't know if I even got a picture with her. She posted online. Like, I'm like, hi, Gabby, how are you? How was breakfast? How's it?
6'2".
Just and even standing next to Destiny, you're just kind of, and Destiny was just, she's a football player, she's ready to go. She's ready to she's amped up. And next to Gabby, I was like, oh my God, like, wow. Okay, cool.
So Rizin, a big success. We streamed it live on Fightful.com, had a live viewing party. By the way, guys, Fightful.com has more live viewing parties than any other website, period. I didn't know that Alaska Fighting Championship existed until I saw on the docket David T's covering that for Fightful.com tonight. Hot damn. We're covering Brace MMA this weekend. UFC. We've got Ring of Honor Wrestling Friday. Bound for Glory Sunday, if it happens, unless WWE buys the company out before then. Lots of stuff going on at Fightful.com. Go there, register, absolutely free. I see you raising your hand, Joe.
I have a question.
Sure.
Pardon the sarcasm. Is there a course that I could take so I could speak American?
American?
Because I was told.
Yeah,
I was told that I sound too Canadian by an American. I don't know what that means.
Repeat after me. I am about to go to Japan again.
I am about to go to Japan again.
Yeah, you sure as hell do sound too Canadian.
Like I was just sitting there and I'm like, I'm too Canadian. What does that mean? Like, do you want me to learn how to speak
You got American? Your flappy head and the Terrence and Phillip deal. And
like, what can I do to change that? I'm laughing. This is me.
Stop. Maybe stop shooting up maple syrup into your veins. How about that?
Stop riding a moose to work. Me, Heath, and we're just dying of laughter when we read that. I'm like, okay, so do I take a New York accent course, a Texas accent course, a Louisiana, Mississippi, West Coast? Do I need to get a drawl? Like, what's American? How do you speak American? Like if you're Canadian, you sound different if you're from Toronto, Montreal, Quebec City, Newfoundland, Vancouver, Alberta. What? It was awesome. What?
Yeah, guys, go to Fightful.com, register. You get access to our soon-to-be overhauled forums, columns from Showdown Joe and Vince Russo when you register for free, no credit card, no money ever required. podcasts from myself, Showdown Joe, Vince Russo, Matt Riddle. Some of those you get early access on Fightful.com only with your free membership. You'll get exclusive backstage news. I've been reporting a lot about the TNA wrestling situation. And then you also get 5 to 7 podcasts a week, viewing parties for WWE, UFC, TNA, Ring of Honor, Bellator, everything on Fight Pass. You get Brandon Howard's financial analysis, our monthly Wikipedia True or False segment, exclusive interviews with the likes of Cyborg, Chael Sonnen, Josh Barnett, CM Punk, Muhammad Hassan, EC3, tons of people. Also, Alex Pawlowski's reaction articles. We put up the Raw YouTube rankings, a little bit of a different metric to gauge which segments are getting the attention. Fightful.com, it's the place to be, you guys. Madison Square Garden is going to be the place to be on November 14th. Jesus, Joe. Jesus, this show. Now, I've mentioned this a few times on the show. Just since we've started, like UFC 200 until a couple days before looked like the most loaded show of all time. It ended up not being. It was close. It was a pretty damn good show, but not as much. I'm starting from the bottom up here. Liz Carmouche, former UFC title challenger against Caitlin Chikagan. That's going to be a banger. And you got to think, Liz Carmouche, she's fought once in the past 2 years against a very hot young prospect in Chikagan. Former Bellator champion Lyman Good against your boy, Bilal Muhammad. So that's a big one. Jim Miller against UFC 100 title challenger Thiago Alves. Tim Boach, who I equate to all that is man in life. Like I don't think he trains. I think he changes oil at the gym all day. Like he just goes under people's cars. He's changing oil and tires for people. He's facing Natal, Rafael Natal, a veteran of the UFC. 6 years he's been there. It doesn't end there. This is just the low-level prelims, and that's a pretty high level for low-level because it's better than a lot of the fight night cards we've been seeing lately. Then it gets real. Former UFC bantamweight champion Miesha Tate takes on Raquel Pennington. And if Raquel Pennington had a couple of different judges, then she would be 7-0 in the UFC right now. So that's going to be a big time fight. Tim Kennedy returns to take on former UFC light heavyweight champion Rashad Evans at 185. You have lightweight champion Frankie Edgar against, who is he?
Jeremy
Stevens. We'll get to that momentarily. Michael Johnson, who is a Cincinnati Bengals player, a 4-time Olympic gold medalist. Oh, wait, that's not the same Michael Johnson.
No.
Unfortunately. Yeah, I wish he would come out in gold shoes, though, like the Olympian did.
Yeah.
Well, he's taking on Khabib Nurmagomedov, and he's facing a very pissed-off Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, what this is probably one of the fastest strikers in the division against the best wrestler in the division. That's awesome. Donald Cerrone against Kelvin Gastelum. Awesome top 10 welterweight fight. Former UFC middleweight champion Chris Weidman taking on Yoel Romero, who, medaled in the Olympic Games. You have Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Joanna Jędrzejczyk for the women's strawweight championship. Tyron Woodley defending the welterweight championship against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And Eddie Alvarez defending the lightweight championship against featherweight champion Conor McGregor. Joe, your thoughts?
Dear Jimmy Van, you please send Sean and I to New York, Madison Square Garden, UFC in NYC at MSG. Come on.
We'll do a live show.
This is a ridiculous card. MMA gods, please, under no circumstances should you just watch over these fighters. Make sure the training camps are absolutely the best they've ever had. Let every single one of these bouts take place. Just let karma gods, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe in, let them just train and be happy and come in at 100% because this card is stupid. It is stupid, ridiculous. I can't wait for this thing to go down. And like you said, you mentioned that those first 4 fights. I mean, if those are on the Fight Pass prelims, That's ridiculous. I mean, it's crazy.
Sounds like they're getting a 6-fight main card.
Right? Well, no, you can't. You've got 3 title fights, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point.
Yeah, you can't. You can. It's going to be, you might get 4 fights on the main card. Don't be surprised.
I think they'll still do 5. I think they'll still do 5.
Yeah.
I really do.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they do 4.
Man. Whew. That show, it's something. They did a press conference yesterday to announce these. This really all came together last moment. It was Conor McGregor, as usual, dominating. I will say Eddie Alvarez did pretty good hanging with him. The sunglasses thing where McGregor dared him to make him take off the sunglasses. Then McGregor, when staring him down, took them off himself. And Alvarez is like, you just took them off yourself. I don't have to make you. But, man, Jeremy Stevens got ethered. Like, it was bad. Poor guy. He does hit really hard. He is among the hardest hitters at 145. He cut off a question and said, Conor McGregor TKOs people. When I hit them, they don't move. Conor McGregor paused and he said, who in the F is that guy? And everybody laughed, including the other fighters. And Jeremy Stevens kept trying. We're going to have an article up on it in the morning. Even afterwards, he was like, he knows who I am. Called him a leprechaun, a bunch of stuff. He was reaching. I'm talking like end of Space Jam, Michael Jordan from across the court, Looney Tunes reaching. It was pretty bad. You heard this segment on mainstream radio, you said.
Yeah, on the way to some of the consulting work that I do up here for my friend's place, I'm driving, and mainstream radio here. It's actually the station I used to work at, Sportsnet 590 The Fan. And as I'm driving up there, the host of the morning show basically says, you got to hear what Conor McGregor was doing. And they started arguing about, was Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz bigger than Mayweather, Pacquiao? And they're just going back and forth, back and forth. He's like, okay, anyways, forget all that, guys, and blah, blah, blah. Here's what Conor McGregor said to Jeremy Andrews. And I'm like, who's Jeremy Andrews? And I'm like, oh, he's a fighter on the card. He's competing on the undercard. I'm like, I know there's a Jeremy Stevens, but he's like, oh, yeah, Jeremy Andrews got on the mic. And I was like, oh, I don't think he's realizing what he's reading. He's just going off the top of his head, blah, blah. He corrected himself afterwards, but then they played the clip. And right away when I heard Jeremy Stevens' voice, I'm like, yeah, of course, that's Jeremy Stevens right there. And I'm driving up the highway, and I'm just trying to contain bodily fluids as I'm driving because I'm just laughing so hard as Conor McGregor does turn around and basically say, what did he say? He said, who the are you? And I was just like, oh, or who is this guy? And I'm like, that's Conor McGregor, man. That's just, you can't match wits with him. You can try and match wits with him. There aren't that many that can. I mean, short of Chael Sonnen, who can match wits with this guy? This guy on the microphone is just magnetic. Is he for everyone? No. But he's fantastic, and he's just gotten so big, he's gotten so popular that name resonates in mainstream radio, at least here in Canada. I'm not sure what it's like down in the States, but anything this guy does, I mean, his press conferences now are, this is what George St. Pierre used to do. This is what Chael Sonnen used to do. I mean, it's crazy how big Conor McGregor has turned himself. And I remember before he even got to the UFC and the stuff he was doing, I'm like, this guy's got it. Like this guy, I remember talking to Dana about this. This kid's good. This kid's really good. He can fight. Give him time, build him up. And well, they didn't build him up. He just took off. He gets on the mic, and the guy's fantastic. He's absolutely crazy. So anything and everything he says, I mean, they've got Conor McGregor clips on the show whenever a guest says something really, really bad. They hit the button, and Conor McGregor rips them, and then it's just crazy. So he's gotten so big in Canada that it's just, I'm really happy and proud of him for sure.
8 champions or former champions on the show. When all is said and done, I think an additional 4 possible former title challengers on the show. It's loaded. It's a loaded show. Tyron Woodley, heavily booed. Joanna Jędrzejczyk came across as a star at this press conference. They were chanting her name. She just says, "Hi, New York," and they went absolutely nuts. She is one of those girls who has a certain charm about her that she doesn't come across as fake. If she doesn't like somebody, like Claudia Gadelha, she's letting them know. but she still seems like a very, very sweet woman, and like she has that sweet charm to her. But man, she will slaughter you. And this fight, Dana White said that Joanna is part of the reason that Carolina got her job, was because she said that she eventually wanted to beat her, so people didn't think that, and I quote, "this bitch was the baddest woman in Poland." So that's awesome. UFC 205. Hot damn. Hot damn. I can't wait for that. You know, weeks like that, they're very, very, very busy weeks at the site. But, Joe, I know you've been there. It's like you can't wait to work. You can't wait to cover it. You can't wait to see what happens next.
Totally. It's cards like this that you look forward to, and take nothing away from all the fighters that are competing on the Fight Night cards and the other pay-per-views, because they put in just as much work as these ones here, but it's just name recognition. It's brand, it's branding that these guys do. They're just fantastic. And Conor McGregor ripping into Eddie Alvarez for not renegotiating the fight and the money by signing with the money he's already got in his contract. You just, oh my God, you don't do that, But then you had Chael Sonnen that says John Jones is hiding under the ring for 3-4 hours, trying to avoid a test from the commission. So
I'll never forget certain things
you don't say, but wow,
live on the air, and you hadn't heard that he said that story yet. Yeah, man, that was fun. Well, we had UFC Brasilia this weekend. Chris Cyborg against Lena Landsberg. Landsberg said that in her 80-plus Thai fights and her 8 MMA fights, she has never felt anything Borg gave her. You know what? I believe it. Couple things I noticed. Cyborg got warned for holding the fence a few times. This isn't condemning Cyborg, but you can't warn somebody 4 or 5 times without taking a point. Not that it would have mattered, but I'm talking about refereeing in general. You can't do that. You got to take a point after, I don't know, twice.
Yeah, warn once, point twice, gone.
Sure. Cyborg looked real good, and Landsberg hung in there until the middle of the second round. So this renews the Rousey-Cyborg talk. Do you think that fight ever happens?
Do I think that fight ever happens? It's a part of me, Sean. Every time I try and look at something on my screen here, you slow down, so I can't look at my screen. I'm going to say I think it's going to happen. I'm trying to remember the age difference between Cyborg and Ronda. I think it's 6 years, maybe 7.
No. I think it's 3 or 4.
Okay, so they're much closer in age then. Well, then it's
Cyborg turned 31. No, 2 years. Rousey is 29. Cyborg is 31.
Okay, so they're just 2 years. I don't know why I thought there was a big age gap there. So I think that we're going to probably see a Mayweather/Pacquiao type of situation where Mayweather continues to, quote unquote, push this fight as far as possible until he noticed that Pacquiao began slowing down, and he wasn't slowing down. Perfect time to fight him. I think this is what potentially might happen with Ronda Rousey's camp. Just kind of push Cyborg until she starts slowing down. Then it's the best time to fight, because in my opinion, if this fight takes place right now, and it's what I've said since day one, it's what I've said forever, Cyborg would hurt Ronda Rousey. It's just a different style matchup.
I think that if she fought the way she did against Leslie Smith, I think she would absolutely just dominate Ronda Rousey. I think if she fought the way she did against Lena Landsberg, I think that Ronda Rousey has a much better chance, because if it goes into round 2 and the majority of that is spent in a clinch, I think Ronda Rousey bodes much better than if she strikes at range like she did against Leslie Smith and puts her away in 80 seconds. Because as we've seen, the blueprint to beat Ronda Rousey is out there. Now you have to wonder, would Ronda Rousey fight the way she did against Holly Holm ever again? Well, something tells me that if Edmond Taverdian is leading the charge, she probably will.
I saw that coming before your light bulb in your head went off.
It's a good thing you saw it coming, because Edmond Taverdian probably wouldn't. And if he did, it would smack him right upside the head, and he would say, "Beautiful, champ. Beautiful." Either way, legitimately, I think if she fought the way she did against Leslie Smith, she struck at range, she would back Smith against the cage and unload. That's picture perfect for Ronda Rousey based on what we've seen. Also, based on what we've seen, you don't want to get in the clinch with Ronda Rousey because I had figured up a stat at one point. There was only one woman up until the home fight that had gotten out of a clinch of Ronda Rousey's on her own volition. That was Sarah McMahon, who was an Olympian. And then seconds later, she was put in a clinch and then kneed in the liver. So that's a fight I want to see so bad, so bad. And I wish there was a way. I wish there was a way to have these two both at their peak. You know what I mean? At their peak physical condition, because there's no way to do it. Because Ronda Rousey isn't at her peak at 140 or 145, and Cris Cyborg. The thing about Cris Cyborg, she might not even be at her peak at 145. Her peak might be at like 155, like for all we know. But as few people as there are at 145, there ain't anybody at 155 except Charmaine Tweet when she decides to fight there, and Cyborg already killed her. So it's this weird conundrum. It's this weird situation. I don't know, but I would love to see that fight. Cyborg looked awesome, per usual. Looked awesome. Said that she was only interested in 140 for super fights. And Joe, I don't disagree with her. You know, I've said a lot about Cyborg and her weight and stuff, but if the people that she's fighting are Leslie Smith and Lena Landsberg, then just don't cut the extra 5 pounds. Like if it's Misha Tate or Amanda Nunes or anybody else, any top 10 UFC bantamweight, sure, do 140. But these girls, what's the point, Joe?
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. Look, Cyborg fights at 145. These ladies fight at 135. Let's meet in the middle. It's not rocket science. Let's meet
Leslie
in the middle.
Smith would fight at 125 if there was such a thing.
Yeah, and the same thing with Ronda Rousey. I mean, in this fight here, meet in the middle. Simple. 140.
I worry that Cyborg would not even be at her physical peak there, though. Which, to be honest with you, I thought that the division to begin with should have been a 140-pound division. That's what I thought. Like, because you had a lot of girls back then that would kind of go back and forth. You know, there were a lot of them that did that. And I thought 140 was perfect. I thought that would have been really great because there weren't as many girls back then. Now, sure, there's plenty of 135ers. Also on this show, Roy Nelson created some controversy, which we will talk about. We'll talk about his fight. But after he knocked out, well, I guess we can now. After he knocked out Bigfoot Silva, he gave John McCarthy a little boot on the ass. Like, he thought that the fight was stopped a little too late. It was a terrible fight. But after setting the precedence with Jason High, Joe, don't you think it'd be a little hypocritical to not shit-can this guy?
Yeah, it's listen, I consider Roy Nelson a friend, a guy that him and his wife have always taken care of me anywhere and everywhere. But you can't touch a referee. You simply can't. And again, full disclosure, John McCarthy, my 2 certificates there from John McCarthy. I know John McCarthy very, very well. So it was a weird one for myself to watch, but the bottom line is you can't touch a referee. Dana White, went off on it on one of his podcasts, or was a guest on the podcast. He went off and said that they should bury, the commission should bury Roy Nelson. And I thought to myself, well, you kind of bury Jason High. I don't understand. Like, why aren't you just doing it to Roy Nelson? I know for a fact you and Roy Nelson do not get along. What's happening here? Is he there because...
I'll tell you what's happening. Bellator didn't want Jason High. They want Roy Nelson.
That's a very, very good analogy right there. Yeah, I can see that. Exactly. So, and I guess Roy does have a bit of draw that the UFC, if that's the theory, Roy does have enough drawing power that he would bring a lot of, just again, Bellator is like sort of building, almost like a pile, right? It's just slowly but surely going. Before you know it, they're this big entity.
But I mean,
it can happen.
He's never beat a top 10 guy in the UFC. He is against current UFC fighters, Joe. 2-11 is Roy Nelson. Also, he's dumb as hell. He had the balls to say that he had won 3 fights in a row when he lost to Derek Lewis, and I thought that the card in his favor was very – I didn't think that he won that fight. But either way, he's nowhere near a title shot and had the balls to say he was. He's done weird things like solicited Facebook likes, said if he got to 100,000, he would drop to 205. And I think a lot of people did it. I thankfully wasn't dumb enough to do it, but did it for his own health. Like maybe do that. But Bellator would sign him, or Rizin would sign him, or somebody's going to sign him. Speaking of Rizin, I would like to see Bigfoot Silva cut from the UFC and be at Rizin. Because I'll not skirt the issue. The drug testing over there is probably non-existent. But this is a guy who needs TRT.
If I could stop you real quick, it's not the drug testing that you and I would like to see. But I mentioned Sakibara in the speech. The doctors are there as well, explaining what would happen to every single fighter post-fight. They have to stay within the presence of a doctor to provide a urine sample, which would be A tested and B tested. So they are doing drug tests, just not on something you and I would be like, listen, you can't just do it fight night. It's got to be random. It's got to be, whatever, World Anti-Doping Association, because you can't really use USADA. Well, you can, but you can't. You know what I'm saying? So they are drug testing in Japan, just not the way we'd like it.
Bigfoot needs TRT for his everyday life. He's got acromegaly.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be getting knocked out as a result. And he's won one fight of his last 8. It's time to let it go. It's time to let it go. For this, and you know what? He might get paid a little more at Rizin than he is in UFC too, because he is
got a tweet. I don't know if you got a dude. Write down 6 numbers right now. Write down 6 numbers.
Sure.
There's a report that just came on my phone right now that says manager expects Bigfoot Silva to be released. Head overseas. Comments on Roy Nelson kick. Dude, you need to write 6 numbers down and go play lottery.
Hey, there we go. There we go. It needs to happen. It really needs to happen for his own safety. I'll say this too. I don't see Renan Barão beating any top 5 featherweights. Not a one. Did you have the opportunity to see anything of him and Felipe Nover, who is like definitely not a top 15 guy, but that was not a good fight as well. It was a really bad fight. Felipe Nover, let me pull up his record real quick. Whew.
I hear what you're saying.
1 and
the fact that
1 and 5 in the UFC.
Sorry, I hear what you're saying. The fact that Renan Barão went the decision with Felipe Nover is continuing to puzzle all of us, because Felipe Nover, great, he's a good fighter, but
he's the next Anderson Silva.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was
of course.
What? That was crazy.
Yeah, according to Dana White years ago.
But I mean, Renan Barão. It's one of those things that you and I often talk about where we kind of get sidetracked. It's like how the mighty have fallen.
He's won 2 of his last 5, but Felipe Nover, Mitch Gagnon, not the highest profile of names. Also, I want to call out the UFC rankings panel because I want to fight these humans, Joe. Over half of the panel has Antonio Bigfoot Silva in their top 15 heavyweights. It's inexcusable. It's stupid. It's a farce. And these are shown on Fox networks. I hate it. It pisses me off, Joe. I'm pissed off about it. You know what I did? Call me crazy. Go ahead. I don't care.
I tweeted a couple. You said you want to fight these human beings.
I want to fight them. I want to fight them. I tweeted a couple of people, and I said, Bigfoot in your top 15. Explain. You know how many tweets back I got? None. They won't own up to it. Dorks. What a bunch of dorks.
You're terrible. Sean, you're terrible.
Man. Pissing me the hell off. UFC Portland this Saturday. We got to figure out a time we're going to do a show, Joe. Headlined by a real banger. I can't wait for this main event. John Lineker, John Dodson. Ooh. These are the kind of fights that you watch MMA for.
Yeah, I mean, this is the fight. I mean, they haven't announced on the broadcast on Saturday. Did they mention anything about Dominic Cruz, his next opponent?
No.
Then this main event, I mean, is this not going to determine who the next contender is? I don't think. I mean, if they were going to say Andre Fili was going to be the challenger, they would have said it by now.
Garbrandt, maybe.
Sorry,
they may
Garbrandt,
wait and see how.
I meant, sorry, Cody. Yes.
Yeah, Andre Fili. He's on this show.
Yeah.
But these are two former flyweights who, for different reasons, didn't either get their shots or make it. John Lineker because he had weight issues. John Dodson because he ran into the wall of Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. This is power versus skill, speed, and technique. How do you think this one goes? This one, like I said, this is one of the reasons you watch MMA.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I don't think John Dodson will be suckered into getting into a brawl with John Lineker. I think he's going to play the game smart. He's got 25 minutes, plenty of time to use it. I think he's going to just play at range, use his footwork, use his speed, use his angles, and not get stuck in that brawl. Because if he gets stuck into a bomb fest with John Lineker, I'll put money on John Lineker. That dude there just has a way of taking shots and giving them, and he's always, feels like he's always the last man standing in those exchanges. I just think John Donson's going to be a very, very cerebral and smart fighter, and really just try and shock and awe John Lineker into thinking that they're in a stand-up war. Bang, take him down on the ground, stand back up, and just continue to paw away at him until the opportunity comes to finish him. That's the way I see it going down. But it is MMA, and if Lineker lands one of those punches, Sean, Dodson could be in trouble big time.
Former Bellator champion Will Brooks taking on Alex Cowboy Oliveira. Oliveira has won 4 of his last 5. His only loss in that period to Donald Cerrone. This fight at 155, Oliveira has been competing primarily at 170 for the past year and a half. Will Brooks didn't look too impressive in his first fight, but I mean, octagon jitters, all that good stuff. He's facing a real test in Alex Oliveira, a test that, is a little under the radar. A lot of people don't know Alex Oliveira. What are you looking for out of Will Brooks here? Because he has to do something big to really push himself towards that top 10.
Well, you mentioned his octagon debut and the UFC jitters, and I could definitely buy into that. But he also, after the fight, said, let's take care of some old business with Eddie Alvarez. You go and say that about the UFC lightweight champion. Guess what? In your next fight, I hate to say you got to finish your guy, but you got to finish your guy. You got to make a statement in this fight. Yeah, and
you probably should have the guy before that.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. Like, you shouldn't have said that after this fight. Now that you said it, well, guess what? You're fighting Cowboy Oliveira, who's a tough dude, man. This kid can go. So you're going to have to finish this guy, in my opinion, if you want to even be considered anywhere in the title mix. He's got a bit of way to go because this division is retarded. It's just, sorry, that was a bad term. Is ridiculous. I just want to see this fight go down and see if Will Brooks can actually, within 15 minutes, do enough damage to Oliveira to then make a statement and then go back on the mic and say, hey, you know what, blah, 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 Eddie Alvarez, blah, 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 Conor McGregor, blah, 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 division. That's what I'd like to see.
It's a pretty good fight. I'm looking forward to it. But, there are so many, I see that UFC 205 card, and then I see this card, and I'm like, not so glamorous. Not so glamorous. Either way, Josh Berkman's taking on Zach Atau. Now, Berkman is a dude. He went on a real hot streak in World Series of Fighting. Beat Gerald Harris, Aaron Simpson, John Fitch back to back to back. Lost to Steve Carl, and his career's never really been the same. He was facing some pretty high-level guys, Hector Lombard, Dong Hyun Kim, Patrick Cote. Dropped to lightweight, mixed results here. In my opinion, he has to win to keep his job. Because if you lose to a guy who nobody knows after starting your UFC career off with 1 win in 5 fights, you got to make an impression.
I concur 100%. And just to go back to the comment you just made, Sean, about, we look at UFC 205 and then we look at this card here. It just goes back to what, we've discussed at length, in some of the articles that I write. You and I talked about it all the time. There was a time when the UFC, before this Fox deal, was the Super Bowl of MMA. It was the best of the best competing. Now it's the best of the best. It's A level, B level, C level. A lot of the guys that we're seeing on this card, for example, these are grassroots MMA fighters. These are guys that should be champions or competing on grassroots shows. And the UFC, I'm not saying they should ever go back to just 12 shows a year, But that's what it used to be. It used to just be a pay-per-view driven business. I would like to have seen 24 shows a year, one in the middle of the month, or sorry, pay-per-view, followed by a fight night, followed by pay-per-view, followed by a fight night, and you just carry it on across the year, as opposed to fights every single weekend with names and guys that are just, we don't know who they are really.
You know what I think would make it easier? If they went to 10 fights a show, maybe 11, just in case something happens. Because let's see,
12.
There are 12 fights on the show, and that's, you know, maybe less than usual, but they got to serve Fight Pass, they got to serve Fox, and sometimes pay-per-view. It's rough, but I've mentioned this before. Baseball is trying to find a way to make their game shorter. WWE and MMA are trying to just expand it and expand it. It's rough. Luis Smoka against Brandon Moreno. Moreno is a replacement for Sergio Pettis. Did you see the video that Smoka put out last week in regards to this?
No, I didn't know.
So he put out a video and he got hammered for it. He was like, oh, sorry to hear that Sergio pulled out. I've got him some tampons for his injured vagina and yada, yada, yada. And he got hammered for it. Now here's the situation he's in. Unless he smokes this guy, no pun intended, he's going to look like a real asshole. Like a real asshole. He already looks like a real asshole. But now he's against a guy who is on an 8-fight winning streak, who finishes guys with regularity, quickly, who has a great ground game, is more experienced than him. And if he loses, oh, man, he's as good as cooked. I mean, he's going to keep his job. He's a good fighter. He's a great fighter. Won 4 in a row in the UFC, but you can't. And, you know, the thing, just saying that in general, like, come on. Sergio Pettis is a gamer. He is, I think, at one point last year, he had already caught up to his brother Anthony as it pertained to UFC fights, which should tell you plenty. What do you think about the way he approached that and the pressure that's got to be on him now?
Yeah, you're right. I think your assessment is bang on. I mean, I don't know what else to say because, in my opinion, you nailed it on the head. You can't. First of all, you can't go out and say stuff like that. I mean, I'm not saying that like, it's just not everybody's cultured, Sean. You know what I'm saying by that? It's like, you know, I'm accused of making certain mistakes sometimes, but I know what not to say or what to correct myself right away, and not to just put out a video or record a video, look at it, and say, yeah, post it. What? Don't do that. You should know better than to use that terminology to talk about anybody else, because it's damn offensive to a lot of people. You got to be a lot more cognizant of what you're saying out there. At the same time, you painted yourself into a corner right now. Totally put all this pressure on yourself when you could. The pressure was already there because you're supposed to win this fight now. Now you've just made it a virtual guarantee that you better win this fight. For all we know, Sean is going to win this fight. Okay, it's just the way it's going to go. Discussing it, but the pressure you got to put on yourself now is unnecessary. Just focus on training, focus on the fight. You don't get Sergio Pettis. Totally understand that. Do what you got to do. Now, Smoker could be watching us right now and saying, "Look at these two clowns. Watch me. Watch how fast I smash this guy." Well, okay, cool, but a lot of pressure on yourself now.
You know what the most surprising thing about this show is?
Tell me.
Tamden McCrory is still only 29 years old.
Tamden McCrory, the Barn Cat, is awesome.
I remember seeing him fight Pete Spratt in 2007.
Yeah.
Young. Dustin Hazlett, remember that fight?
Yeah.
He's still 30, but he retired years ago because I don't want to get into that. Local MMA politics, in my opinion, were at play there. Some bad leadership, in my opinion, was the result of Dustin Hazlett hanging it up so early. But either way, Tamden McCrory fighting Nate Marquardt. This is a good matchup, I think. I think this is an interesting matchup.
Well, you know how your boy absolutely just like the world revolves around Nikita Krylov?
Uh-huh.
My former producer at Sportsnet, Bobby Torrens, what's up, my man? Tamden McCrory is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Tamden McCrory is the great. I mean, any news that came out about the Barn Cat, we would celebrate at work. because he loved him so much. He just thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I remember, like, my Bobby's, really good friend was a superstar in the NHL. A multiple time Stanley Cup winner, gold medalist, World Cup winner. So he's been around professional athletes his whole life, involved in hockey and the UFC, from Brock Lesnar to George St. Pierre. He was around me the whole time. Man, when Tamden McCrory was walking down the Mandalay Bay or MG, I'm trying to think of where it was. I think it was the Mandalay Bay down the hall, because Tamden's really tall. And as he was walking down, I just saw my producer going, and my producer was a good 6'5", 6'4", 240, 250. Hope I'm not seeing it too much, but he was just like in awe. I was like, yeah, this idol. It's just like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, come on.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, that's a great matchup, I think. Joe Silva did a very good job putting that one together, because I'm like, that's like, I just think of that and I'm like, interesting. I would have never thought to pair those two together, but there you go. Hakran Diaz, top 15 UFC featherweight, taking on Andre Fili. And I'm not sure. Well, I know that Diaz got the wins over Alcantara and Elkins, but man, it seems like he never fights, even though he's fought every year since 2012. But since 2012, in those 4 years, he does only have 6 fights, which is not as many as a lot of people. He has never finished inside the UFC. And he's facing a guy, Andre Fili, who really likes to go at it. This is one I'm interested in, just to see who imposes their will on the other.
Yeah, but this is the whole thing. This is the opposite of recency bias when you think about it, right? Because Hakran Diaz has competed, but we've seen so many people compete since his last fight that we forget. Oh yeah, Hakran Diaz. Oh, when did he fight again? Oh, and you look and you're like, oh yeah, I saw that one. That was a while ago. But it's like it seems like he never fights. You can make the argument about so many of the fighters on the UFC roster. It's just so many fights, dude. There's just so many events and so many bouts. But then you get a bout like this where people aren't talking about it, but unless you're a hardcore fan, you're looking at this and you're like, hey man, this is a solid fight. You wish this one was sort of on another card or was happening somewhere else, but this is where it's at. It's on a preliminary Fox Sports 2 card, and this is probably going to steal the show. It could steal the show minus the main event.
I completely agree. Not a whole lot else to talk about on this show. We'll talk about it after it happens. Joe, any final words for the people before we go?
Yeah, I know you and I talked about, joking around that I'll be going back to Japan. There's no guarantee that I'll be going back to Japan for the December show. My fingers are crossed.
They hated you? Did they hate you?
No. They definitely liked me. But there's no guarantees for me and for Heath in general. So we're just kind of waiting by the wing and just kind of saying, okay, come on, please email me, call me. Let's figure this out.
Who brought you, Rizin or Eversport?
Rizin.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we streamed it live on the site. Got a lot of compliments about your work there. I thought it was excellent.
Thank you.
I loved the reaction to Crazy Horse's knockout.
And it's a big blur to me, but post-fight and some of his terminology and his antics, I was just like, oh my God, do I acknowledge? Do I not acknowledge? Do I keep my mouth shut? And I'm looking at Heath and I'm like, oh boy, what do we do? This is crazy. What is he doing in there? What is he saying? So yeah, it's that kind of stuff there. It's just, you can only do so much, right?
Indeed. I thought it was great. Very happy for you. One of the best in the business, in my opinion. Guys, I am back tomorrow at 2 p.m. with Matt Riddle. Sign up at Fightful.com. Members only podcast. You'll get exclusive access to it for the first several days if you register for a free account at Fightful.com. Also, share Fightful.com on Facebook and Facebook groups, Reddit, Twitter, all that stuff. Getting a little tongue-tied here. It's been a long week. But guys,
you miss me, Sean. Don't lie. You miss me. Just say it.
I wanted to do it. I wanted to do a show last weekend. I'm hoping we can figure it out this weekend. I'm sure we will, but I just got to make sure that the timing is right and all that good stuff. But guys, until tomorrow afternoon, we are out.